Welcome to BFR Radio, a podcast dedicated to all things blood flow restriction training. This podcast is proudly sponsored by the BFR.co, where if you want to buy your own BFR cuffs, access online BFR training programs, increase your own BFR knowledge with the accredited BFR.co course, or you want more information about this type of training, this is your one place to go. And I'm your host, Dr. Chris Gavilio.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my car. We're just going to get going. The question I have today is from a rugby player who has tendinopathy in his Achilles and also a few issues with arthritis in his big toe when running. The athlete that contacted me, it's the start of pre-season and the Achilles has flared up again. The issue with pre-season is the high running loads. You've come off a break and we had that period of unloading, and then usually pre-season is high loads, which even if you're not injured is problematic on its own. This rugby player has used BFR before to good success and had a few different questions around its use in terms of, will it help activate the calf? Once he's finished the rehab, should he reload to normal isos? Or actually probably the other point that he was using traditional high load isometrics, which is one of the traditional methods that whenever you have a tendinopathy, people will go to one of two schools, and that's either using high load eccentric training or high load isometrics. So for the isometrics, it would be in like a standing calf raise in a Smith machine or a calf raise machine and holding that for time. Or the other methodology for you could do that bent knee as well. Or the other methodology on the eccentric was you get 2 feet up and then you lower it down with supramaximal loadings, and that's the key there. And as we could imagine, if you have a sore Achilles, it's going to be sore doing that. However, you tend to just persevere with that. Talking about the toe just briefly, if you have arthritis, there's a little bit of evidence around the effectiveness of potentially using hypoxia to help the arthritis. You're not going to get rid of the arthritis, and perhaps this is another article on its own, but there has been shown to be some benefit of a hypoxic type environment. Therefore, BFR creates a localized hypoxic environment, and potentially there could be some real interest there. The good thing with BFR, as we know, when we are loading, is that we don't have to use as higher loads as normal. Traditionally in research, 20 to 30% of 1 RM. However, I do personally think in athletic populations, we need to push that up to 40, 50%. And there's lots of really good evidence around using BFR at high loads at 70, 80, even 90%. Therefore, what I would do is starting at a lower load and something that is manageable, I would incorporate more of a traditional Achilles tendinopathy rehab. Now, one protocol that I suggest would work really well, and when I was at the State of Origin a few years ago, there was a player who had chronic Achilles tendinopathy and couldn't walk properly in the morning. So I advised to do a morning activation session to decrease the pain and to get the Achilles and get the body moving. And that's another really good thing with the use of BFR. It decreases joint and tendon pain significantly. Therefore, what I would be doing every morning, you get up, you want to get rid of that pain so you can actually feel like you can function normally from the start of the day. The good thing is that even if you're wearing a suit to work, you could put the cuffs on top of the suit because we're not going to be doing anything of major intensity. And what I would be doing is, if it's really sore and you can't walk, you put the cuffs on and then you would do some really gentle, low range of movement calf raises just to get everything moving through that Achilles, getting the calf activated, getting everything moving through the ankle joint. Now, if you go small range movement, you need to do lots and lots of repetitions. So something like 15 to 20 reps would be good. And then walk 5 meters out, 5 meters back, concentrating on form. And you don't have to be walking like full stride. And it could be just really small steps, focusing on really good technique. And then when you come back, do some isometric holding for 10 seconds. If the pressure is quite intense at this stage, because it is first thing in the morning, release the pressure halfway and then reinflate and repeat 2 to 3 times. With a lot of people that have used this, they have noted that the tendonitis or the pain in the Achilles had pretty much totally dropped out. And it would be really interesting to see if the big toe feels better as well. That sets you up in the morning. Every single morning, you're starting off on the right foot, no pun intended. I would systematically use that as part of your rehab. You could use the isometric protocol, and I probably would, but I'd do a combination of straight leg and bent knee calf raises and isometrics as well. So how would that look in a session in the afternoon? Hopefully you've had an okay day and no major issues. And throughout the day, like if the tendonitis is quite painful or quite restricting, use it again. I kind of liken the analogy of paracetamol. If you have pain in normal tendinopathy, they say to do your isometrics, it's your paracetamol. Same thing with the BFR. You could take them to work. You don't need any weight. You could be at work, you put the cuffs on, and you do that same body weight routine. Calf raises till you have that feeling of really good fullness in the calf. Hopefully by this stage, most of the pain has been knocked out. You go for that gentle walk up and back, and away you go. You could be doing that 2-3 times a day as pain persists. Because that's the good thing about BFR is the ability to do lots of high frequency type training with it because the loadings are so low. Then you'd be looking at doing some kind of strength stimulus. And yes, I agree that you need some load on your back. And I'd suggest that you would systematically increase that starting at around 40% and then building up. So what does that a session look like? You head into the gym, and if we're just going to focus solely on the calf only, you put the cuffs on, just body weight, start walking around, setting everything up. So you got time for the accumulation of metabolites, everything's starting to work, and then you start your first set of calf raises. And the good thing is you just go body weight and you pretty much go to technical fatigue, 1 or 2 reps short. That's all you need to do. And most of the magic is starting to happen there. If you can keep the pressure applied continuously, then we start our loading, because we are going to be doing our isometric single leg calf hold. It's going to be our main exercise. In the lead up to that, rather than jumping straight in, let's do a really thorough warm up for the calf, which the added benefit is that's going to be helping the calf and the Achilles complex anyway. So it's a real bonus for you. Now remember, we're going to go high reps, and it's going to be low, 20%. So what is 20% if you don't know what your 1 RM is? You could start with a 20 kilo bar in the Smith machine. As long as it's not an unloading Smith machine, you just add weight. So you might start at 20 kilos, lots of repetitions, aim for 12 to 15. And then you might go 30 kilos and then 35, keeping the load really low. Because then we're going to then go into our isometric holding, where you probably want to be going up to around 60% of your 1 RM, because although you've got the cuffs on, and even if we are doing the BFR work for our calves and our Achilles or our lower body, we still keep them on our thighs. And the important thing to realize is that around our calf, we have superficial nerves and blood vessels, as opposed to the thighs. There's lots of muscle around the thigh to protect them, and we don't want any issues going around, numbness due to nerves or any blood vessel issues putting them on the calf. So really important point there. And it's just as effective. To highlight that, there's a really good study that I've reviewed on BFR Radio before, where you put the cuffs on the thighs and they did BFR calf raises, and they just kept retesting their 1 RM, but the loadings were at like 30% of their 1 RM. and they had increases in Achilles strength and also in the thickness of the tendon. We've done our calf raises, we've ticked some really good boxes there, and then it's time to get into our isometric holding. And you'll actually be able to hold a fair bit of load on your back. The good thing is you won't need to put that extreme loading through your back to hold those positions. I'd hold it for a little bit longer. I don't know what your holding times are, but I'd be looking at 10, 15 seconds per repetition because the loading is a little bit lower than that traditional maximal loading. And then you can really concentrate on holding good position, making sure everything feels okay through the calf, Achilles, and also through the big toe, that you're not offloading in that position. And you would look doing a combination of bent knee and straight leg. And that's all you need to do 2-3 times a week. With the morning sessions, you do your activation, you knock the pain out. Then you would do your 2 to 3 strength stimuli through the week. You'd be ticking that box. Now when you go and train, I would be putting the cuffs on your thighs and going through pretty much that same morning routine again. And it's going to do several things. It's going to decrease that pain, increase muscle activation. There's a couple of other potential performance benefits associated with BFR cuffs. Some research has been shown to increase mitochondria carrying capacity of the blood, which the mitochondria is the powerhouse cells of our body, which is going to help our running performance. Therefore, what I would do before you go and do any kind of running session, put the cuffs on, do some gentle calf raises, get everything going and moving, feeling good, walking up and back, calf iso holds, maybe just 2 times. And then what you can actually do, if you're doing any running technical drills, you can do walking or marching variations. If you're doing any glute work and you're doing any mini band work, you can put that on as well. And not only would you be looking therefore at improving the feeling through the Achilles and the calves, but you're really making sure that everything through your lower body is activated and ready to go. And another side point, if the stimulus is correct and if you respond correctly, there's been lots of evidence around improvements in anabolic hormonal markers like testosterone and growth hormone. Now, testosterone really interesting in that it's associated with behaviors that we want as athletes. Typically, aggression is one thing that comes to mind, but the behaviors like determination in the gym, high levels of testosterone have been correlated with willingness to increase workloads. You're more likely to put more weight on the bar, more stress on the system. Longitudinally, you have greater outcomes. Therefore, by being able to set yourself up hormonally, and then also through improved muscle activation, also decreasing joint and tendon pain, you've really set yourself up nicely for the session. And then you look at incorporating this as a recovery tool. There's actually a bit of evidence around using it passively to increase performance the next day or actually in between competitions. An easier example, which is not relevant in rugby, but if you would be in a competition like, say, a rowing regatta or a kayak regatta where you would compete in the morning, have a heat, and then later on in the afternoon, by having a passive stimulus that's just seated, inflate, deflate, 3 to 4 cycles, the next performance is much better. And there's other studies as well about showing performance improvements the next day. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to ensure that you have great recovery so you can wake up the next day feeling all right. And what that would look like is at nighttime when you're sitting down watching TV or even just cooking, I feel a bit of movement would probably be more beneficial for you. You just put them on, inflate them for 3 minutes, you do your cooking, and then deflate for a minute or two. It doesn't have to be exact science because you're just moving through the range, especially after a really big session. That's going to help you feel, well, decrease that pain as you go to bed and potentially will help make you feel better the next morning. So as I said, you deflate just about halfway because you don't want the cuffs to fall off the thighs, and you just repeat that another 2-3 times. Once you've finished cooking your dinner, happy days, you're all done. And then by the time you get to sit down, you take the cuffs off and enjoy the rest of your evening. And I would just continue that forever. With your training, especially your strength stimulus, you want to be looking at increasing the load over time. When you break it all down, it's all about how much stress you can put on the system. And traditionally, load is what we would use, and that's mechanical stress. So we're just going to top that up with metabolic stress. And why not use it systematically for the rest of your life? Because at the end of the day, it's less load going through your back. And playing rugby, which is a contact sport, it's brutal on the body. I think a little bit less load on your back. It's far more beneficial, especially when you're still going to be getting great activation, decreasing pain. The only difference may be is that past this acute stage, you may only have to do that morning routine 3-4 times a week. I would do it on your big training days or after a big training day. On the morning of a training session, it'll set yourself up nicely for the day. And if you do it the day after, it'll just ensure that the Achilles and your lower limbs feel really good. So let's say you've done a really big session or you've had a really big gain. The next day, it might be a little bit stiff. You say, I'll get through this. And what you end up doing as you're walking, you're just offloading a little bit, and with that toe history as well. So you just knock the pain out, you get everything feeling pretty good, and then away you go. And I think that's a really nice strategy moving forward. And that just becomes part of how you train now for the rest of your rugby career. So at the end of the day, does it matter that you have 120 or 140 kilos on your back doing isometric single leg hold? No, it matters that the Achilles feels good and the calf, everything is strong. And it matters that you feel good when you play. Hope that was useful and gives you some really nice, strong guidelines moving forward. If anyone has any questions related to this and wants me to expand a little bit further, let me know. If you do like this kind of format, let me know as well. If you're listening via an audio podcast, you won't notice any difference. But if you're watching via video, you'll obviously see the car and everything moving in the background. I hope I get some more questions over time. It's a great way for me to fill in my drive to work on my daily commute. Talk to you soon.
And that's all today for this episode of BFR Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to catch up on lots of great BFR training content on our Instagram page, which is @thebfr.co, or alternatively on Twitter, which is @thebfr_co. For more information and to order your own set of BFR cuffs, please visit our website, which is www.thebfr.co. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep the pump.